Ladies and gentlemen, the second major of the CDL season is tomorrow, and I'm just going to get right into it. We're going to be doing the pick'ems, and this one's going to be interesting because the stage 2 qualifiers pretty much was chaotic. No one looked dominant at all. Teams looked great one day, horrible the next, and it felt like no one was pulling away from the rest of the league. So it's going to be exciting. But to get right into it, the first match of the tournament, this is winners round 1. We're gonna have Optic Texas versus LAT. Now LAT got in the winners bracket because they were able to beat Boston. They almost choked, like it was pretty bad, but they were able to clutch up, win that series in game 5. Some other things went their way, whatnot. Now look, this one's gonna be tough because I'm an LAT fan, obviously, and I want them to win. But if we go ahead and we just look at their performance, we're going to click on just stage 2, okay? Bear with me. I know this screen is probably super bright. They went 8-11 map count, okay? They made it into winners going 2-3. They lost to NYSL, LAG, and Toronto. NYSL and Toronto, those are 2 top teams. They got beat down by Toronto pretty bad. LAG, I was surprised that they lost that series. But then they were able to beat London and Boston. Just look at their stats. So in hardpoint, they were 3-5. S&D, they were 2-4. In control, they were 3-2. So the only positive mode that they have is control. If you look at their overall KDs in each mode, in hardpoint, the only one with a positive KD has been Octane. It's been rough for Envoy, Kenny, and Draza, really. They haven't been on the same page at all. And it shows. And then it's more the same in S&D. Draza is the only one with a positive KD, 1.23. Octane struggling. Envoy and Kenny both have 0.9s. And when you look at that, the one mode that they actually have a positive record in, they all have above a 1 KD. So if you look at Optic Stage 2, they beat Boston, beat Seattle 3-2, 3-2, beat Toronto 3-1, lost to Las Vegas Legion 3-1, which was surprising, but then they beat Atlanta FaZe 3-2. They reverse swept them. So that goes back to what I was saying, like, Optic looked great in the beginning. I know that they played Boston with Scump. They were to beat Seattle and Toronto with Kyler on the team, but then they lost to Las Vegas Legion. And this is not the same Legion as last year or the years before. They're a very solid team, but you would expect them to beat that team. And then they were getting bodied versus Atlanta FaZe, and they came back and reverse swept them. But if you look at their mode and map records, 4-6 in hardpoint, but they were 6-2 dominant in S&D this stage, 3-2 in control. So realistically, you don't want to be here. Like, if you're an Optic fan, you don't want to see them where they're at right now. You don't want to rely on your S&Ds. That should be a bonus for a team like this. But the fact that they do have 2 modes that they're positive is good. Their hardpoint is the only thing that is worrisome, but it's really not that bad. So who do I think is going to win, right? I just gave you all of that. I just got to go Optic Gaming, or Optic Texas, excuse me. Now this hurts. This hurts me because I want LAT to win, but they just haven't been playing good at all. And on the side of Optic, they have been kind of up and down, but their S&D looked great. So I do think Optic's going to win this. I think Optic might win both S&Ds to win this series because LAT's hardpoint is pretty good. They, like, even their losses, they just kind of collapsed. Whereas Optic, that's definitely their weakest mode. But we'll see what happens moving forward. So that means Optic will be in winners round 2. The second match, well, technically not the second match. I don't know why they do this. This is actually technically the first match of the event, but whatever. NYSL versus Minnesota. I got to go NYSL here. Minnesota, I don't know what to think of them. NYSL, they are the reigning champs. I think they're going to come out, do their thing. They're going to move on to winners round 2. They're going to be going up against Optic Texas. And if you scroll down, you have Toronto Ultra versus the Los Angeles Guerrillas. Now, this one shall be kind of interesting. I'm actually going to go back to the breaking point just to look at some of their stats from stage 2. So if you look at Toronto, they had a great stage 2. They went 4-1. The only series they lost was to Optic Texas, 13-5 map count, 5-3 in hardpoint, 3-2 in S&D, and 5-0. They went undefeated in stage 2 in the qualifiers in control, which is big time. That's big time for them because that's the swing mode. That mode matters just as much as the rest of them, even though it may not seem like it just because it is, only one mode in a best of 5. But that's very impressive. I actually didn't realize that they went undefeated. And then on the side of LAG, they made it in the winners bracket. They went 2-3, 50-50 map count. They went 11-11. And if you look at their game mode and map records. They went 8-2 in hardpoint. They're arguably the best hardpoint team in the game. I believe they were 7-0, and then they went 1-1 to end 8, or I don't know. But regardless, they're probably one of the best hardpoint teams in the game. But they're 3-4 in S&D, so you know, hit or miss. Realistically, not the worst, not the best, but they're definitely the worst control team in the league. Now, like I said, Toronto Ultra was undefeated, and LAG is defeated. They didn't win a single one in the entire qualifiers, and that's basically going to put them in a rough spot going up against Toronto, because when I scroll back to Toronto, you got to favor Toronto in that map 3, and then in S&D and hardpoint, it could go either way. Like, you probably would favor the hardpoints depending on what maps they get for LAG. But who knows? Because LAG's 3-0 in Embassy and 2-0 in Fortress, and Toronto Ultras 0-1 in Embassy, and they didn't even play Fortress. So Fortress is probably an auto veto. So if that's the case, you would assume that LAG would want to play Embassy, and then if they ended up vetoing one of these 3 down here, either Hotel, Hydro, or Mercado, and it gives Toronto Ultra the opportunity to maybe get Mercado, maybe get a Hydro, that might go 50-50. And then when it comes to S&D, I'm going to favor Toronto. So I do think Toronto is going to win this series. I have a 3-1 in favor of Toronto. I think LAG might win the first map. They might win the first hardpoint, and the next 3 are going to Toronto. And the last match in the winner's bracket is going to be the Boston Breach versus the Atlanta FaZe. Now, look, Atlanta FaZe has been wishy-washy, but I'm not quite sold on Boston Breach. So I do have Atlanta FaZe winning, but I will tell you this, I think it's going to be map 5. I think Atlanta FaZe is going to come through. They're going to clutch up in the S&Ds. I know I say this a lot, but even if this doesn't go map 5, I had this at 3-2 because I think this series will be very close. So even if it's a 3-0, 3-1, I think the maps will be very, very close down to the wire. And then that means we're going to have Toronto Ultra, Atlanta FaZe. So winners bracket round 2, we have 2 very good series. Optic versus NYSL, Toronto versus Atlanta. Scrolling down to losers bracket round 1, LAT is going to go up against Florida Mutineers. I do think LAT is going to win this series. I think they're going to get a nice 3-0 victory versus Florida. I think they're going to kind of find their footing a little bit in the losers bracket. And then we have the Minnesota Rocker going up against London. Now, London has scraps. He was very, I would say, inconsistent in the stage 2 qualifiers. If we go over and we look, let me pull this up real quick. Just to give you a little bit of context on how they did in stage 2, 5-3 in hardpoint, 1-6 in S&D, 1-4 in control. So the only thing they've really been performing in has been hardpoint. And scraps actually has been 1.05 in hardpoint, 0.78 in S&D, and 1.12 in control. But so I'm not sold on London. They looked pretty damn good in the first stage qualifiers, and then they went to landing, absolutely smoked. And I think that's going to happen again, unfortunately, until they can prove me wrong. I think Minnesota's going to win this 3-1. We're going to have LAT going up against Minnesota, but before we get there, we're going to finish out these matches and lose round 1. LAG versus the Las Vegas Legion. And I'll tell you what, Las Vegas Legion might be the best S&D team in the game, and I got to root for them. They're the underdog story, man. They're really turning around the Las Vegas. Well, this is the first year that they've been Las Vegas, but the Legion name, okay? They're giving the Legion a better name this year. I think they're going to come out and they're going to win versus LAG. I think it's going to be 3-2. Excuse me. It's going to be close. And then you have Boston Breach versus Seattle. And unfortunately, so Seattle, this has happened before. I've seen this before, where Seattle win an event where they're top 2, top 3, and then they go to the next major and they just completely flunk out. Now, their only win was against NYSL. And I mean, when you look at just, they went 5-4 in hardpoint, 3-2 control, but 0-7 in S&D. And if you just look at their stats, realistically, a lot of it is just if Pred and Sib go off, this is going to be close. If Pred and Sib have a series, they're going to win this 3-0, 3-1. It's unfortunate because they're starting in losers bracket. So I actually think that Boston is going to take this. I think Boston's going to win both S&Ds. I do. I think we're going to get 2 3-2s back to back. And then that means LAT versus Minnesota. I think this is going to be a LAT 3-1. Las Vegas Legion versus the Boston Breach. I think Las Vegas Legion make a run. I do. I'm confident in them. I think they win 3-2. The best S&D team in the game. I think that stays the same at this major. I think TJ Haley's going to have a fantastic S&D as well as the rest of the Las Vegas Legion. But now we got to scroll all the way back up because Optic Texas versus NYSL. Look, man, you got to keep going with the reigning champs. They looked great at the first major. For the most part, they looked great in stage 2 for as well as they could have, with every other team looking kind of the same. And then Toronto Ultra versus Atlanta FaZe. This is going to be interesting because stage 2 qualifiers, 3 and 5 in hardpoint, very lackluster. 5 and 3 in S&D, very solid. And 3 and 2 in control. So they've been winning a lot of their series the Neslo way, right? 2-3-5, because their hardpoint just seems so inconsistent. And a lot of that just comes down to Slasher and Simp, not having the best KDs, but also the pacing is just off. The team just doesn't, they're just not on the same page when it comes to hardpoint, in my opinion. But when you look at this, you have to favor Toronto. Now, this is online, I know that, but Toronto is a very good team, and I just think Toronto matches up pretty damn well versus Atlanta FaZe. I got Toronto winning this 3-1, meaning we're gonna have NYSL and Toronto in the winners finals. Atlanta FaZe versus LAT. I think Atlanta FaZe are going to win this series 3-2. Unfortunately, that means LAT is going to be out. I would love for LAT to perform well, but they haven't looked good. It's stage 2, whatever. Look, they're going to bow out early in this one. Okay, they're going to bow out early in this one. They're going to come back. They're going to figure their shit out, and they're going to start heating up at the right time like they did last year. And then for Optic versus Las Vegas. Now, Las Vegas did beat them in the qualifiers. They lost both hard points. That's actually quite surprising that they only won the S&D versus Las Vegas, and that's both good and bad. Okay, it's good because Las Vegas is a top S&D team in the game, so the fact that they were able to beat them in S&D is a good thing. But they're also 3 and 6 in hardpoint in stage 2, and 1 and 4 in control, and somehow they beat Optic in both of those. Their Optic's only control win. Both teams aren't the best at hardpoint. It's really going to come down to the control. But I am going to say Optic Texas, they move on. I think they're going to ice up in a map 5. I think it's going to be close. There's a lot of map 5s for me this major. And then we have the winners finals, NYSL versus Toronto Ultra. I have Toronto Ultra. This is going to be a 3-1 series. I think Toronto's going to come out hot. They're going to do their thing. Atlanta versus Optic in the losers round 4. I have Atlanta FaZe beating Optic Texas. I think that it's actually going to be pretty one-sided. I know Atlanta FaZe got reverse swept, but I think that they're going to be able to get it done. They're going to be able to get that 3-0 done on LAN. NYSL versus Atlanta FaZe. I think we're going to see NYSL in back-to-back finals. I think NYSL win this series 3-1, putting him in the finals versus Toronto Ultra. I got Toronto Ultra, baby. Not 4-0. I think we will see a new winner. I think Toronto's going to win 4-2. That is my final. Appreciate you guys, man. Have a good one. And even though I made this, I hope LAT win it all. Just so you know.